Welcome to the Behold podcast, a project of Arcade Church. We are so glad you've joined us today. We have a super fun episode. A couple Sundays ago, Pastor Craig sat on the platform and answered a bunch of questions live. Well, today we are going to get to some of the questions that we weren't able to hit that Sunday. So if you asked a question and you're wondering what Craig thinks, maybe what I'm thinking, stick around and we will answer some of your questions today. Hey, Craig.
How you doing, Beth?
I'm great.
Good.
Good.
It's a special week for you, right?
I mean, yes.
It's birthday week.
It is.
So happy birthday in
Thank
advance.
you. Thank you. I'm excited.
I don't know when this drops, but it's going to drop way after your birthday. But, we like you around here. We're glad you're here. That kind of stuff.
I love being here.
And
And
your girls are going to be here.
yes, my whole family will be together for
Yep.
the first time since June.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about birthdays,
Yes.
I thought I would share with our home audience some pet peeves that our sister Beth has.
Do we have enough time?
Well, you found this in your mailbox in the office.
Yeah.
And if I had known about it, I would have put it there, but I
Okay.
didn't. And it's one of those daily calendar things, And it says this, and this is you to the T. I don't care what your religion is. I care that you chew with your mouth closed.
Is that too much to ask?
One of the most violent times I've ever
No,
seen
don't tell
Beth.
the story. It's so embarrassing.
One of the most violent times is that we were deep in prayer in staff meeting several years ago,
Yeah.
probably 7, 8 years ago. And one of the staff members had brought, as a snack, some corn nuts.
Not just some corn nuts, like 17 varieties of
17
corn
different
nuts.
varieties of corn nuts. And so around the table, you can imagine the sound of those corn nuts being chewed on and stuff. And we had a wonderful staff member who didn't mind closing their mouth
No.
when they were chewing.
Right.
And when that happened, I have never seen you move so quickly. I mean, you literally jumped over the table and you grabbed the corn nuts from this person whom we love.
I grabbed all the corn nuts
You
off the
grabbed
table.
all the corn nuts.
So embarrassing.
And we haven't had corn nuts since.
I've confessed the sin, Craig.
Well, I think a lot of us still have trauma from that event because we've just never seen angry Beth before until that moment.
Yeah. Not my finest, shiniest.
Well, it's still fun though. But anyway, this definitely rings. This is
Yeah,
you.
that totally is.
Yeah,
Like I
this
saw
is
it and
you.
I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
my friends know me.
Yep. That's
Okay,
right.
so enough about me. What's your pet peeve or one of?
I just love people, Beth. I don't have any pet peeves. I love people, all kinds.
Do you love
Nothing ever irritates me.
Do you love when people show up late?
Well, I mean, that's
Dr.
because
Hardinger?
I think that's what Jesus would hate. No. What I don't mind a person who is usually prompt being late.
right.
Because I know that something happened.
Right.
But it's the individual that is perpetually late drives me crazy.
And the person who's perpetually late and has a Starbucks in their hand. It's like, come on.
Yeah. And then bring you anything.
Well, that too.
If you're going to be late,
Right.
bring us something. Yep, that's right. I think I'm sure I have more. If Debbie were here,
Yeah.
she would probably take the whole show.
Well,
to
and
talk
I do
about
too. I mean,
pet peeves, but that's the one that bugs me the most.
yes.
It's just, I hear my dad saying, late people are selfish people. Late people are selfish people. I can't get that out of my head.
Well, and like you have a saying about 5 minutes early or on time's late and 5 minutes early is on time, something
Yep,
like that.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do value being on time. I think it's important.
It is.
It's
it
an
is.
easy way to show other people you care about them.
Yep, it is. It is.
All right.
What are we going to do today?
We have something kind of fun and different.
It is, yeah.
So, a couple Sundays ago,
Mm-hmm.
you and Debbie sat on stage and responded to a ton of Ask Me Anything questions.
You were sick.
I was
that-
sick. I
yeah.
was sick at home, and I was watching
Mm-hmm.
from the couch. And you guys did a great job. Like,
Oh, thank you.
I was so pleased with your answers and how brave you are to just take on these questions, because you literally don't know the questions ahead of time, especially with the Slido app that we were using. But what was really cool is we were able to capture all of those questions.
Yes.
And there's 160 questions.
160. I couldn't believe it. When Chad gave us the schematics yesterday, I didn't realize we had that many questions.
And some of them are fun, like MJ or LeBron.
Yeah.
So which one?
I have no idea who those people are.
Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
I was kidding, but
I was a little worried. I'm like,
I see. If it's baseball or football, I'd answer that. I just don't care about NBA. Okay. I just don't care.
Okay.
So I think they're fine.
I think LeBron flops and Michael Jordan would never.
Oh,
Michael Jordan would never flop.
That's true.
And LeBron James is always like,
How does he go?
Suck it up, Buttercup. You're in the NBA. Stop flopping. So MJ would be my answer to MJ or LeBron.
Are you sure? Because that's not like you to not have an opinion. So, Okay.
Another pet peeve of yours is
right.
Beth's opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of questions, we copied and pasted all 160 questions, took out the ones that you and Debbie responded to, and then we kind of categorized them into some topics or categories.
Whatever. Well, you did, which I really appreciate. You did a good job with that.
So today we're going to address questions we put in two categories, tough questions and politics.
Yep.
So...
And can I just say, because people are asking, why don't you look at the questions before they're asked? And the reason for that is, I think that it is to try to be transparent, and then also it kind of that 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15, be set apart Christ as Lord in your life, always be prepared. And so I want to convey that, because let's face it, when we're asked, like we've looked at these questions already,
right?
And our listeners are going to know that we have somewhat of a canned response. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Every Sunday when I preach a sermon, it's a canned response to that passage.
You've prepared it.
Yeah, I've prepared. But I think sometimes it's healthy just to shoot from the hip. And sometimes what comes out, like even Sunday with the Ask Me Anything Sunday, I drove home thinking, oh man, I should have said that. I should have said this, or I shouldn't have said that.
Right.
And I think that there's some transparency that happens with that. It's definitely not to show how much I know. In fact, it reveals how much I don't know.
It's not the Bible Answer Man show.
No, it's not. It is not. I wish it was, but it's not. And so
but also you're faithful to the word. And I think if you answered a question in a way that you really regretted, you would address that to the congregation.
Yes.
Because there have been times where you've said something and then the next week come back and said, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
So it's a posture of humility, which I appreciate about you. All right, so let's jump in to the first tough question. How should I respond to non-believing friends when they ask why God allows school shootings and other mass shootings, such as the one in Kansas City?
That was from the Kansas City Chiefs celebration day, right?
Which I think it sounded like it was like a disagreement between two people, and then they were shooting at each other, and the bullets aren't discerning.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately.
I think the key here is, we haven't really talked about this one, so this will be a spontaneous one, is the non-believing friends.
Yeah.
When they ask why God allows. And I think that's an opportunity for this individual, whoever asked this question, to say what we're seeing in Kansas City, what we see with the evils around the world, and even in our own home, is simply humanity's way of saying we want our lives and we want God out of it. I think Romans 1 talks about that. When Paul is listing all of these things that God has done and we've ignored him. He's revealed himself and we bury that revelation because we don't want him. And so what we see with Kansas City shootings and any other shooting and any other violence, any other evil in the world that doesn't even include violence, is simply humanity saying, we don't want God. And this is what you get. And so God is simply giving people what they want. It seems hypocritical for a non-believer to blame God for something when they don't believe him anyway.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's the tenor of the question, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think I I would agree with that.
Mhm.
And I might add, God is grieving more
Yes.
than we are.
Good point. Yeah.
This makes his heart more broken than it makes.
Mhm.
That's not good grammar,
Mhm.
but you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, God is love,
Yeah.
and death and tragedy and mass school shootings where children are terrified. Do you
Mhm.
think that doesn't break the heart
Yeah.
of this
Mhm.
Father that is love?
Yeah.
It does. But if people don't understand that God is love, they're not going to understand that
Right.
either. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's tough when it's someone who's not believing and feels like this is maybe a barrier to
Yeah.
belief.
Yeah.
So,
God has given us a world that we want. And in the world that
oh boy.
yeah. And in this world that he's given us, it's going to have shootings, it's going to have evil, it's going to have despicable things that humanity does to humanity. And all the while, he reigns in control over that. He is sovereign over that, but he is giving us a taste of what we desire. And we don't want a world with him in it? Fine.
Yeah.
This is what a world looks like. I think that's one of the reasons why in Romans chapter 1, Paul says the wrath of God is being revealed against all the godlessness and wickedness of humanity. What we are seeing with the Kansas City shooting is the wrath of God.
Yeah.
It's God saying, you want a world without me? Here it is. And that's his judgment. And that's why we as a church, we've been planted in these places to be that outpost where we can be emissaries. And so I pray, for example, with the Kansas City shooting, that the churches in Kansas City come around this
Yeah.
and be able to be ambassadors of Christ, reconciling people to God.
Beacons
through
of peace and
yes,
hope. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Good question, though.
Yep.
But one that's a very common question.
Okay, the next one, we talked about Super Bowl commercials a couple
Oh,
episodes ago,
yeah,
but this one is, what are your thoughts on the He Gets Us campaign? If you don't know what that is, some wealthy Christians or organizations have put out these commercials called He Gets Us, and they're a little thought-provoking,
Very
a little,
contemporary.
yeah, very contemporary. They might rattle your cage a little, which same. But the point is hoping people will check out the website and then get connected in local churches near them and come to find Jesus.
Yeah.
But again, it's a little controversial. What do you think about it?
I don't know. I mean, I think anything, for me, it goes to what Paul said in Philippians chapter 1. He's in prison, and he hears that there are some people preaching the gospel who don't like him. They're against him, maybe his personality or maybe his approach or his methods of evangelism. They don't really appreciate Paul. And apparently he's asked to respond, what do you think about those guys? And he says, all I care about is the gospel.
He's kind of like, so what?
Yeah. Now, the gospel is not going out with the
Right.
He Gets Us
Right.
campaign. I think that's by design. These are people who believe the gospel, but their intent is basically, it's clickbait. They
Right.
want people to Google He Gets Us campaign, where the gospel is presented, I understand, or they want to Google Jesus and that kind of stuff. And so if the purpose is to raise curiosity about our Messiah, I'm all for it. Would I do it that way? I'd probably be a little bit more pointed. If you're going to put, I think we talked about this, at $7 million per 30-second spot. It seems to me that they can be even more pointed
Right.
and more deliberate with the gospel than just creating curiosity
Less
about
clickbaity.
Jesus. Right. Yeah. But you know what? These are brothers and sisters in Christ. They're using their money in a way that, Lord willing, builds the kingdom. And so go for it.
Can I say something kind of bratty?
Well, why? It's just Wednesday.
Oh, so yes. Sometimes I wonder, people that kind of pick apart something like the He Gets Us campaign, I kind of want to ask them, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing to advance
That
the
is
gospel?
so bratty.
I mean, it's kind of...
It's good, though. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Because it's easy to say, you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't do that. All the while, you're sitting at home
Criticizing the ones who are doing it.
criticizing, but
Yeah.
doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's the bratty Beth of the day.
I mean, when I see them, I appreciate them. I thought the ones, you corrected me on one of them when we were talking about
the foot washing
the
one.
foot washing
Yeah.
one. And you know what? I would do it differently, but it's
Yeah.
not my money.
Right.
And I thank God for them. I hope it bears a harvest. I really do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This one's worded kind of interestingly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you love same-sex couples? What would Jesus do?
I think this might be, it may have been I could be wrong, whomever asked this question, but this may be in response to a question that I responded to on that Sunday I mentioned about a month ago that same-sex marriages are fiction. And someone asked that question because of Slido, they could vote.
Yep.
And so that got a lot of votes. And so it might be that this is in response to that, because they might think, since I think that same-sex weddings are
like those marriages aren't marriages.
they're not marriages, they're fiction, that I don't love them. And nothing could be further from the truth. I grow and I want to love all people as our God does. And so, yes, I love same-sex couples because they're image bearers.
Right.
I'm called to love them. If I don't love them, I'm in disobedience. I'm sinning. But I also, because I'm under the authority of God's word, I just can't reread my Bible or rewrite my Bible to make it look like I'm more loving.
Right.
Because the basic bottom line is, what would Jesus do? Jesus did what he needed to do. He died on the cross for same-sex couples, for people that profess their faith in him. He died on the cross for them. That's what Jesus did. And so for me, I need to die to myself and love my neighbor. If I have a neighbor that's a same-sex couple, I want to be a great neighbor. I want to play cards with them on Saturday nights and maybe go to movies with them and have dinner with them and be a good neighbor and take over. Debbie she's always making soup, and she takes over soup for our neighbors and stuff. And so we want to do that. So yes, we love them.
That what would Jesus do question, you and I talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
So John Mark Comer's an author and
very good author,
podcaster, pastor, etc. I've heard him say recently, what would Jesus do? Okay, that's a good question. But a better question is, what would Jesus do if he were me? Because Jesus was a celibate rabbi in first century Israel.
Most of us aren't that.
Like, I am a married mother of 3 adults, working ministry person, woman, whatever you want to call it. What would Jesus do if he were me? Okay. How would Jesus show love to people in my shoes?
That's a great. And so again,
so the bracelet has to be a little longer.
but I think it bears repeating. What you're saying is, it's fine to ask, what would Jesus do? But a more pointed way is, what would Jesus do if he were living my life, if he were me in this particular situation?
In Sacramento in 2024 at Arcade Church, in my home, et cetera, et cetera.
And so he would absolutely love same-sex couples. He would go to dinner with them. He would invite them into his home. He would be that kind of...
Or invite himself into their home like he did.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Hey, Zacchaeus, I'm coming over.
What do you got to eat? Yeah.
All right. I think...
Oh, let me ask this one to you, all right? This is probably more for women.
Sure.
And you are one.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the borderline of modesty?
That's an interesting question, because I grew up in purity culture era.
80s,
90s, where, very hard and fast rules. Shorts, you had to put your hands down and they had to be fingertip length. And you could, your straps had to be at least 2 finger. I mean, they were very clear.
And you went to school, you had to wear a dress.
Had to wear a dress that had to be to your knees. And I mean, very clear rules about what modesty was. And you can agree or disagree. I think modesty starts in your heart.
Okay.
I think it's a heart posture, because you can be all covered up, but have an attitude that's not modest.
That's provocative. Okay.
That's
very true. Yeah.
So I think the borderline is a set of 3 questions. Does how I'm dressed glorify God?
And by the way, because I've known you as long as you've raised your 3 girls and stuff, and these were 3 that you and Bruce basically had in your household.
Yeah.
So this is not theory to you.
No, this is lived reality.
Yeah. Okay.
This is every day for me.
Yeah.
is the way I'm dressed, does it glorify God?
Mm-hmm.
When we look in the mirror, we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So am I glorifying God? Am I dressed appropriately for the occasion?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to the beach? I'm going to wear a bathing suit.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to the mall? I'm going to dress like I'm going to the mall. If I'm going to be around, certain people, I'm going to dress a certain way
Okay.
because I'm going to dress appropriately for the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 3 is, am I drawing undue attention to myself? And this could even be
To your physical presence or just to your being, yourself?
I think both.
Okay.
I think
All right.
both.
Okay.
Like I think about, there was a reality show where there was a very conservative, large family, and the mom was water skiing basically in like leggings and a dress.
What? On purpose?
Yeah, because that was modest to her
Okay.
to be that covered up.
Okay.
And I'm thinking to myself, I think she's drawing undue attention to herself.
Oh,
Because
I wouldn't have thought of that.
That's not appropriate water skiing,
Yeah.
right? Like wear a wetsuit or wear.
Yeah.
And so I think you might think you're being modest by being overly covered up
Mm-hmm.
when you might be doing the opposite because you're trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like a legalistic modesty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yes, we do have to have guidelines, especially for our teen girls who are just learning. Like they're developing, they're growing, their bodies are changing, and we might have to give them some guidelines.
Sure.
But also, I think we need to make sure we're explaining the why.
Now you've talked about this over the years and stuff, because you and Bruce have these expectations for your girls. And what would happen if one of your girls, and I don't know if they did, but what would happen if one of your girls came out in an unapproving way, dressed in an unapproving or inappropriate way? What would you and or Bruce do?
Well, we would tell them they needed to go change and then
Okay.
tell them why.
Okay. And the why is very as important as
Yes,
Yeah.
because otherwise they might be like, fine, I'm going to dress the way you're telling me to, but their heart is what,
it's really what
right?
you're going
It's a
for.
heart issue. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as we're raising our kids, everything boils down to their hearts.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as we're living our lives for Christ, where's my heart? And a lot of times my heart is not, like it may look like I'm doing the right thing, but my heart might be.
Yeah. And two, there's enough biblical evidence too. 1 Timothy 2, a couple of places in 1 Corinthians 13 where Paul is specifically addressing women and their attire and basically using that word up. And at that time, it was wearing ornate jewelry,
Right.
braided hair.
Right.
It's different today, obviously. But it's important to look that way with the sense that Christ is the one who's magnified
Right.
in our hearts and our bodies.
Yes.
And I think you and Bruce have done a good job with your daughters with that. But it's a good question.
It is a good question.
It's probably one you get asked all the time because of leadership. But it's tough.
It's tough because you don't want to be legalistic, but also sometimes you just have to have rules.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to camp and there are rules about
Yeah.
what you're going to wear or not going to wear.
And I didn't have a daughter, but I was very concerned about the girls that my son would hang around and kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't know if we would say anything. Debbie might, but I don't recall we ever had to. But I think that would concern me is modesty, and usually, let's face it, that is directed primarily to females.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there are definitely certain things about men where we can be able to.
Sure. Men can
Yeah.
get up and say, is what I'm wearing bring
Yeah.
glory to God? Am I drawing undue attention to myself? Am I dressed appropriately for the occasion?
And I think a lot of it, being the father of a son,
Yeah.
a lot of it isn't modesty. It's just cleanliness. I mean,
Go take a shower.
man, don't look like you rolled out of bed. Come on.
Wash your hair.
Combing your hair with buttered toast or something. Man. All right. All right.
Okay.
Enough of that one.
All right, moving
I
on.
think it was a good response.
Thank
from
you. Thank you. Okay, this one's kind of interesting, a little provocative. How should I go about telling people that what our society and schools teach is abominable and disgusting when it is all they know? Those are pretty strong words.
Yeah. Yeah. And my first reaction, I think, was yours when we were talking about this, is what makes you think you need to do that?
Yeah.
especially because you made the observation earlier, this person asked, and we're reading between the lines,
Right.
and so we may be completely off, but it looks like you've made the decision to not be involved in public school education. That's what
Yeah,
you brought
yeah.
up? Yeah. So definitely, you don't have a platform to
Right.
talk about that, and because you've chosen to take your child out of public education, put them in private or home education. That's great. That is a call that you need to make with your children, and you've made it, and that's good. I'm not sure it does anyone any good to point out the abominable things that are going on in public education, primarily because it's in front of God and country anyway. It's not being hidden.
Right. Right.
It's out there. They see that. If they don't see that, it's probably because they don't believe in Jesus, which is more important than the abominable school education.
Yes.
They don't see with spiritual eyes, maybe like the person asking this question does.
Right.
And they might think it's perfectly normal to have their kids talk about gender issues in fifth grade or third grade or whatever.
Right.
And you don't. And I'm not sure it helps for you to point that stuff out.
Well, the thing about this question, and again, reading between the lines, how do I go about telling people?
Right.
So it's a place of like almost finger pointing.
Not much of a conversation.
Not a
going on.
conversation. I'm thinking about your politics sermons where you're like, I want to have a posture of curiosity.
Yeah.
And this question doesn't sound like this person maybe has that.
Yeah.
They've made up their mind and they've decided what.
And they're going to evangelize everybody about how
Right,
evil.
by telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would ask this person a lot of questions, like, what makes you think that? Who are you listening to? What's your news source? What do you mean by abominable? Just try
You'd
to
be asking the person asking the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe try to get them to see that not everything schools teach is abominable and disgusting.
Right.
I mean, and there's a lot of Christian
Public school teachers
and
lot.
principals, and we have them in our church. And I think that this kind of posture, which again, reading between the lines, does not come across as humble.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and if you ask that question and you don't like that response, we totally understand. We get it. But
Email Craig.
Yeah, but the way it's worded, it seems like
Yeah.
like you pointed,
Yeah.
you're gonna point the finger and you're gonna tell them.
Yeah.
And that rarely goes anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Okay, next question. Did God ever condone genocide in the Old Testament?
well, can I be snotty here?
Yeah.
I think God condones genocide in the New Testament because all death is from God. Sin came into the world, and the result, the judgment of sin, is everybody who sins dies.
Yeah.
And so I get the tenor of the question.
Yeah.
I know where you're going with this, but I want to put a gospel flavor on that because basically we're all dead unless Christ intervenes through his death, burial, and resurrection. And the fact is, as you're going back to the Old Testament, which is the tenor of the question, you're going to the Canaanites, the Amalekites, the Hittites, all of these other ites that God commanded the Israelites to obliterate. Judgment came upon them. In fact, in Deuteronomy chapter 9, for example, God is saying, I'm calling you to destroy these nations because of the wickedness that they've done. And so I think that's very, very important that we understand is that God does not condone just going and killing innocent people because there's no such thing as innocent people. We're all guilty. And so I recognize that we tend to want to think that God is guilty of wiping people out. And what makes him any better than the Germans or the Russians who try to wipe away the Jews and all that? The truth is we're all guilty before God. And the penalty for being guilty is death. We're all dead. But the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus Christ has taken on sin and taken on death on our behalf so that we can be able to have life eternal. That's the good news.
Yeah.
All right. But genocide is, human race is judged. And if it weren't for Christ, we'd all be dead. That may not be what they want to hear.
That's all right.
But that's...
Again, you can email Craig.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Actually, email us, behold@arcadechurch.com.
Yeah.
If you're not satisfied with the answers or if it's triggering more questions, just,
Or we misread your question,
yeah.
which is very possible.
Yeah, there's no tone in
No, yeah.
in written word. All right, the last tough question, and then we'll jump to politics.
Mm-hmm.
The world made by God is overpopulated, of which we are the stewards and have dominion. How can there be a mandate to multiply?
I get this question from what are the generations that before you? Millennials, Gen Xers, and Gen Zers. I hear this more from them than any other generation, due in large part because
That makes sense.
they're in childbearing years, but also, the world. Who says the world's overpopulated?
We are stewards of the world.
Yeah,
and we do have dominion over the world. Yes.
But I mean, who says, when you look at the starvation and the famine that's caused around the world, many times that is man-caused.
Yeah.
Governments cause those things. And for example, the Dust Bowl, but when my grandparents moved to Idaho from Iowa, they left the Dust Bowl. Well, what was the purpose? Was the Dust Bowl a judgment of God? No, it was because it had been over-tilled, and typical winds come in and they create these storm clouds of sand.
Yeah.
And that was man-made.
Yeah. The Irish potato famine was man-made.
Yes. And so, there are environmental issues that go on, but I would never say that this world is overpopulated.
We do need to be good stewards.
Yeah.
And we do need to think about our choices and how they affect the world around us.
But that's
all I'm going to say about that.
but that does not negate the mandate that God gave to Adam and Eve before the fall, is go and make more of yourselves.
Yep.
That hasn't stopped, and nor should it stop. And I'm speaking as a grandparent.
Right.
Have kids if you can, especially one that was unable to have children for a long, long time, is have children and enjoy the blessing of those children.
Yes. There's the creation mandate, and there is the next mandate, which is go and make disciples.
Yeah.
So yes, be fruitful and multiply, but also be fruitful and multiply.
And make disciples. Good.
As a
good
disciple
point.
maker.
Yep, good point.
Okay. Politics. We have 2 politics
goody.
questions. Here's one that references Psalm 1.
Yeah.
I kind of like how this question's worded.
It was worded very well.
How do we choose between 2 candidates who are both walking in step with the wicked, standing in the way of sinners, and sitting in the company of mockers?
Again, it's a well-articulated question.
It is. You don't have to choose, right?
No, you don't have to choose. I mean, if you want to vote for, in this case, I'm assuming they're talking about the presidential candidate. If you want to choose, in this case, between, it sounds like it's going to be Biden and Trump, unless something happens. Then I mean, both of these men, in my opinion, have proven that they're in the company of mockers, that they are in the company of the wicked. Yeah. And am I making judgments? I'm making judgments based upon word and deed.
Yeah.
Of many, many years of seeing these men live out their lives. And you don't have to choose between these two.
You can leave it blank.
Yeah. In fact, I've fantasized what would happen if the evangelical community in America, this would never happen, but we all banded together and we told the Republicans and the Democrats,
no.
We're not going to vote for either one of these guys until you put together candidates, men or women, who reflect your platform, your party platform, and then we can decide about the platform as opposed to the integrity or the wickedness of both candidates. And then you throw in the age of both, and that's a problem as well. So
well, and then also, I was on the treadmill at the gym this morning, and I just happened to glance up at the TV that had the local news, and they were reporting on.
Did you just virtue signal?
No.
Yes, I was on the treadmill in the gym this morning, and after about 2 hours on the treadmill,
I would die.
Sorry.
So anyway, I was at the gym this morning. No, I'm just teasing, but I was. Yeah. But I look up at the TV, and there's this graph, and it shows like the voter turnout for like 65 and over. And then it goes down younger. And the first bar, it like filled up the screen. like tons of turnout. And then, of course, it just gets less and less and less. If you're not voting, please vote. Even if you're not going to vote the way I do, vote. I'm Gen X. Gen Xers and younger aren't voting.
Yeah.
Your vote doesn't count if you talk about it on Twitter or, X, whatever it's called, or Instagram or TikTok. It only matters if you show up and turn your ballot in.
And too, it may be that you leave the ballot blank when it comes to the presidential election. Don't feel pressure. You have to pick one over the other.
Right.
If you don't like either one of them, either what they stand for or who they are, then don't vote for them.
Right.
And again, I want to go back to a podcast that we did with Dan Dunmoyer, and he really convicted me about we really need to be more vocal and more active in local politics. That's really where it matters to us. National politics just makes us mad or makes us glad.
Yeah.
But local politics affects the streets we walk on. It affects the crime rate. It affects the schools, everything. And so be knowledgeable about those issues, those propositions, and those candidates that affect us locally. That's far more important than whether it's Trump or Biden.
Yeah, look at who, we see all these supervisor signs and school board signs popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
Google that person and see who endorses. That's kind of what I go by. Okay, who's endorsing this person? Oh, I'm not voting for them.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll look more into potentially voting for them. Okay, last politics question. How do we say it doesn't matter which party you belong to when a Democrat, even if they don't believe in it, must vote for a representative who's pro-choice?
I'm not sure. I read this, but hearing it you say out loud, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, because like during your politics sermon series, you're like, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat.
Right.
Like, whatever.
Right.
And I think this person's like, how can you say that? Because every vote for a Democrat is a pro-choice vote. Is it what it sounds like it's saying? That you must vote.
Well, to this person, then, pro-choice is a primary issue for them, as it is for me.
Right.
But I also recognize that there are other issues that lean into death as well as abortion that the Republican side might be standing for. I don't have time to go into those, but we have to be able to weigh these things. Now, for Debbie and me, I don't know how it is with you and Bruce, but for Debbie and me, pro-choice or abortion issues are a major deal for us. But we also recognize that there are people who think there are other issues that are just as crucial that maybe my party doesn't reflect.
Right.
And so I get that. I understand. I don't agree, but I understand what that is.
But also, this person who's a registered Democrat, this says they must vote. No, they don't have to vote for a Democrat.
Yeah.
You don't have to vote, oh, where's the R? Where's the D? That's who I'm voting for. Be a more intentional, educated voter.
You do not need to be politically tribal.
No. What tribe do we belong to?
Kingdom of God. That's right.
Yeah.
Woo, woo.
All right, let's behold.
Behold us.
Behold. I'm in Hebrews 11, the whole faith and action chapter. All these questions, that's where it boils down to.
It comes down to faith, yeah.
A lot of these questions aren't black and white.
Right.
Right.
We wish they were.
The Bible doesn't address the He Gets Us campaign, right?
Except for the modesty one, you have to wear culottes when you swim, apparently.
Oh, gosh. You said the C word. I hate culottes. Oh. Okay. Anyway. So Hebrews 11, I'm going to read verses 1 and 6. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So as you're wrestling, earnestly seek God.
Yeah.
Ask him for more faith or a deeper faith. He's going to give that to you. I think of the man who's like, I only have a little faith. Give me more.
Yeah.
I know that's not exactly how the Bible says
Help
it.
my unbelief.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Help my unbelief. I believe, help my... Jesus will give you the faith you need.
Yep.
And he will help you discern and understand what he's asking you to do.
That is so true. We worship and follow a trustable God.
Yes.
We can trust him.
Yep.
Even in those areas where we just don't know to go left or right, we can trust him that whether we go left or right, that he will lead us in a straight path.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus is worth putting your faith in
Yep.
and trusting and being earnest in your
Yep,
faith as you
that's
follow
right.
him.
Good. I love that.
All right, so that concludes this portion of the Ask Me Anything
Yeah.
follow-up. We have a whole bunch more questions we'll get to at
Yeah.
a later date. If you are listening or watching, please subscribe to the podcast. Give us some reviews. Email us, behold@arcadechurch.com.
We finally got that one right.
I
Good.
know,
Okay.
it took 17 tries. We haven't said that in a while.
Yeah.
But we would love to hear from you. We'd love to interact with you. Let us know what you think of our answers, but be kind,
Yes.
please.
We're sensitive that way.
But we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.